Welcome back to our show. I'm joined once again by Jamestown Sun reporter Keith Norman and Sydney Morgan of the National Federation of the Blind of North Dakota. Thank you both for joining us today, Keith and Sydney, for taking time out of your busy schedule. Now, Ms. Morgan, can you tell us a little bit more about your involvement with the National Federation of the Blind?
Well, I'm the treasurer of the North Dakota affiliate, and Janelle Bickler, who was coming with me today, who couldn't make it, is the president of the North Dakota affiliate. And for the past several years, that affiliate's been trying to get itself off the ground. There are plenty of people within the state of North Dakota that call themselves part of the National Federation of the Blind. But basically what we do is we deal with issues that affect blind people and blindness, and that affect the general population. So things such as lobbying and lawmaking and law changing. So that's basically what we do.
Now, what role of service animals, what role do service animals play in the National Federation of the Blind and what they do?
Well, I am also the owner / president of Service Animals for Empowerment, which is a service dog organization. We do not train guide dogs, and guide dogs are the dogs used for folks that are blind. They help them, they become their eyes, basically. The affiliate of North Dakota really doesn't have a whole lot to do with the guide dog end of things. If people come to them, the affiliate will help them learn how to use their cane and cane travel, and suggest different guide dog schools throughout the nation. There's several. There's Leader Dog, there's Guiding Eyes, there's Seeing Eye, there's many guide dog organizations that we would refer people to that wanted to have a guide dog.
Now, how much of a difference does a seeing eye dog or a guide dog make to a blind or visually impaired person?
Well, that would depend on the blind individual. Personally speaking, on a service dog level, they provide independence, and a lot more independence. But some people that are blind choose to use their canes for independence, and canes work great. From what I understand of guide dogs, and they fit kind of in the same category as service dogs, but not, they're their separate entity. They do provide more independence. The dogs are not pre-programmed to get you from one place to another. You still have to tell the dog where you want to go, and you have to know how to get there so that your dog will take you there. But as far as protection and that sort of thing about maybe you walking out into the street, that dog is trained to think and make you move so that you don't walk out in the street if there's a car coming. Dog is also trained to have you move under and around objects that'll maybe hit you in the head or that you'll run into. So there's very big advantages to having a guide dog as opposed to having a cane. I mean, the cane can't tell you there's a low-hanging branch. I mean, your cane's hitting the sidewalk. The guide dog will move you away from a low-hanging branch.
The training for guide dogs and service dogs is usually professionally done, is it not? They're almost always professionally done.
Yes and no.
Okay.
Training for guide dogs is usually done by, like I said, a guide dog school, and there are organizations called the Guide Dogs Association of America, and there's international guide dog associations, as well as service dogs associations. A service dog can be trained by an individual, does not have to go through a corporation or a company, but it does have to be trained, and you do have to meet two qualifications. One, you have to be disabled, and number two, the dog has to be trained to mitigate your disability. Now, in the guide dog world, you have to be able to, according to their rules, you have to be able to mitigate your travel by using your cane on your own before they'll allow you to even start training for a guide dog. You have to be able to get from point A to point B by yourself. And a lot of people think the guide dog is going to fix all that and take care of all that, but that's not the case. And then when they find out, well, they have to learn cane travel, they get nervous. But cane travel is like basic beginning walking, like a kid learning how to walk. You have to learn how to get somewhere before you can have a dog to get you somewhere.
Now, are there certain criteria a dog must meet in order to become a seeing eye dog?
Yes, there is. It doesn't matter what breed. I know that most of the breed out there that people look at are Labradors or German Shepherds. It's common, but they're starting to use poodles, standard poodles. I have to correct that.
Is there a reason why Labs and German Shepherds are used more? Is it just because they're more common, a more common breed, or?
German Shepherds were used from the very beginning. The very first guide dog was a German Shepherd. It came out of Germany. And his name was Buddy. And he was brought over here by a serviceman from World War II who brought Buddy over from a German school. So German Shepherds have been the hallmark of guide dogs forever. But they found that personality and trait-wise, Labradors make a really good, personable dog, and they're very easy to train. German Shepherds are a little stubborn. Now, in the standard poodles that they're using now, they also are very easy to train, and they're, I guess, what you would call hypoallergenic because they don't shed. Now, your German Shepherds shed and your Labs shed, so poodles make a good choice for those that are allergic to fur. But the dog has to have a solid temperament. He cannot be afraid of noises, he cannot be afraid of people, he cannot be afraid of places and things like that. He has to be medically sound, and because guide dog work and service dog work is very, very stressful on the animal. You can tell by Jake here, he's stressed out to the max. No, sir, it is seriously stressful. We had to fly to Arkansas in February, and Jake went on the plane for the first time. And guide dogs and service dogs can be in the cabin with the person, but they have to sit on the floor. And Jake was fine until we started to land, and then Jake started sliding underneath the chairs, and that was it for Jake. He didn't want to fly anymore. So yeah, it stresses him out, and we had 3 more flights that day, so it was pretty tricky to get him back on a plane. So.
You mentioned the people need training too to work
Yes.
with the dogs. That's a major part of all this, isn't it?
Yes, it is. After a person learns how to travel with their cane, then they'll submit either a video or they'll have someone watch them travel. I don't know how far they have to travel, where they have to travel, but then they're submitted to the guide dog school of choice, and then they're selected. And once they're selected, then the guide school will look at dogs that might be compatible, because there's another one too. If the dog's not compatible, you're not going to work together as a team. And then that person, free of charge, all the guide dog schools free of charge. They don't charge a blind individual a thing. They even pay for the travel. Most of them pay for the travel for the blind individual to go from their home to the school, and they're usually there from 2 to 4 weeks, depending on the school, to train with that dog, one-on-one with that dog, until they're comfortable before they can take that dog home. So, and by the time the dog's trained, the dog has gone through several phases. I do know in the guide dog school, they have their own puppies, their own breeding programs. So they're breeding out hip dysplasia, which is a big issue. If a dog has hip dysplasia, that's a lot of training down the drain. So the puppies are then raised by a puppy raiser until about 18 months of age. And then they're brought back to the school, and they go through testing and rigorous training until they're 2. And that's pass or fail time. And a lot of dogs are washed out of the program and go to pet homes. The ones that make it, then they're paired with the user. And when the user comes, then they're put together. And like I said, they go through that program and then they're sent home. So, and usually the school will pay for their whole stay and their trip out and the whole thing. So it's a pretty cool program.
Yes.
Now, can you tell us how much the National Federation of the Blind and the North Dakota affiliate is involved in supplying dogs to those in need?
Well, I know that the North Dakota affiliate, because they're so small, they do not have a fund or a allotment for guide dogs. I know they work closely with the Lions Club, and the Lions Club does a lot of fundraising for guide dogs nationwide. And they do fundraisers on White Cane Month, which is usually October, and do some different things like that. And some of the monies goes to the Lions Club to fund those guide dogs, to help fund those guide dogs. What North Dakota will do is if someone comes to us for a guide dog, then we will suggest schools depending on their needs. Some people, you know, that are blind have other needs other than blindness. So, you know, they may need a service/guide dog. So depending on what they need is where we'll send them.
Now, can a blind individual get help from their insurance in order to obtain a service dog?
Well, I'm not sure if they can, but what my understanding is that guide dog organizations throughout the nation completely supply the guide dog for free. It's all donation. They're non-profit organizations. I do know that a guide dog or service dog is a tax deduction on your tax forms, and in some states there is a stipend, and North Dakota does not have a stipend, and neither does Minnesota.
Now, I understand you travel around and give presentations about guide dogs and seeing eye dogs and service animals. Where are some places you go, and what are some of the things you present about? What are some of the things you talk about?
Well, my expertise is not in guide dog. My expertise is in service dog. Okay, there is an umbrella, okay, and there is 4 categories or 3 categories in this umbrella. There's guide dogs, they're their own entity. Then there's hearing dogs, they're their own entity. And then there's assistance dogs, which covers all of it. And under assistance dogs is the guide dog, hearing dog, and then the third thing is service dog. Now, I do service dogs, and I travel and speak with schools and like here on public television and different things. But I'm a trainer, and our company is different. Like I spoke to you about the guide dogs, how they raise the puppies and the individual goes there. Well, our organization trains the person that owns their own dog, if they're disabled, to either become a pet or farther into service animals. Because a lot of people with disabilities feel, I can't have a dog, I can't take care of it, I can't feed it or pick up after it. You know, they may be in a wheelchair, they may be a paraplegic or quadriplegic, and they think they cannot take care of a dog. Well, my job is to show them they can, and my job is to show them with adaptive equipment, or we change things up, that they can own a dog. And not only can they own a dog, but that dog can give them more independence. Jake here will, when he's grown up, he's only 14 months, he will be able to open doors for me. He's already starting to do that. He can open the electric doors. He knows how to push on those buttons. He will be able to take laundry in and out of the washer and dryer, and he's already doing some of that. He'll be able to pick things up that I drop and bring them back to me. He's learning now how to get up on a counter and hand somebody a credit card and be able to take that credit card back and give it back to me. So he will learn hundreds of things to do before he's full grown. And right now he's just a puppy and learning basic learning things right now. So.
Now, do you think most people are aware of how valuable a service animal can be?
I don't think so. I think they're just learning. I think the public's just now becoming aware. Service animals as a whole are relatively new since the 70s. Guide dogs have been around, like I said, since World War II. Hearing dogs and different things, like I said, is relatively new. When the ADA came out with their ruling, it was called service animal, and there were a lot of different animals out there being used as service animals. This year, as of March 15th, 2011, our government signed into law that service animals now can only be a dog, and in very limited circumstances, a miniature horse. Other than that, they cannot have a service animal. Now, there are guide horses out there that lead the blind, and they're doing a pretty good job, I understand. So that's one area I have no idea about, but that's the other option. If you are religiously opposed to having dogs, then you can have a guide horse. So stipulations for that.
An interesting point. Well, I believe we have to get to a break here, but thank you once again for coming in, Ms. Morgan. Appreciate it very much for joining us this Sunday. When we come back, Keith and I will try and dissect what we've learned today after these words.
Coming home can be hard if you're a veteran of Iraq or Afghanistan. You may feel like you're all alone, but you're not alone. At IAVA.org, your fellow vets are all around you. Join our free online community, get the resources you need, and connect to other vets who know where you're coming from. IAVA.org. We've got your back.
The BP oil spill has caused physical and financial damage in the Gulf region, as well as emotional trauma. If you're having increased feelings of anxiety or anger, you can call the Oil Spill Distress Hotline. Call 1-800-985-5990 or text TALK WITH US to 66746. We're working to restore the environment. Now let's work to restore hope, confidence, and peace of mind.
So, are you going out tonight?
I can't. My parents say I have to be home right after work.
That's so gay.
Totally gay.
Ugh, that is so Emma and Julia.
Why are you saying that's so Emma and Julia?
Well, you know, when something is dumb or stupid, you say that's so Emma and Julia.
Who says that?
Everyone.
Imagine if who you are were used as an insult. When you say that's so gay, do you realize what you say? Knock it off.
Pants, pants, pants. I am folding the pants. The pants are long. Do they go on my head? Do they? Do the pants go on my head? No. They go on
Everyday moments can become teaching moments because learning starts long before school does. Give your child the start they need at bornlearning.org.
Welcome back to the show. I think we learned a number of new things tonight, Keith. Seems like each new show we do, we not only educate the public, but myself as well. I'm amazed with what I learned about, therapy dogs and other types of animals here today. What about you?
Well, a lot of this isn't going to be new to people who pay attention to their animals. They constantly kind of amaze people with the intelligence they have and the things they can learn and so forth. I've been involved with dogs quite a bit through my life, and they learn things very quickly. Some things you want them to learn, they learn quickly. Some things you don't want them to learn, they learn quickly. And it's a constant process.
Now, one of the things I thought was interesting is, animals not only learn quickly, but they can help people learn.
They can help people a lot, and there are many different programs out there that train dogs, mostly dogs, almost always dogs now, to assist people, and that's a great partnership between man and animal, and those things are great.
Mm-hmm. Now, Mr. Toso mentioned the Love on the Leash company in Valley City and how they train therapeutic dogs, but I also understand there is a company in Judd that you've had some experiences with before. Can you tell me a little bit about your interactions with them?
Great Plains Assistance Dogs in Judd is a training facility, nonprofit organization, working with the service dogs. They train dogs for mobility assistance. They train dogs, I believe, for hearing assistance, and also some seizure detection and things like that. My experience with them, we've known their trainer for many years. Mike is no longer with him. I think he's moved to other organizations, but knew him for many years. They were the group that if you were ever in the Buffalo Mall and you saw dogs being exercised through there, those were from the Great Plains Assistance Dogs group. And my personal experience with them was a few years back, we adopted a dog that I like to say flunked out of their training program. Others put it a little more mildly, that he either grew too big for the training or whatever. He was a Great Dane. They called him Thunder. We renamed him Moose because it seemed appropriate for the size of the dog. And he had been trained, or was being trained, to be an mobility assistance dog for a person with multiple sclerosis. And this person, multiple sclerosis people can fall and lose their balance and stuff like that. And these dogs would be trained to brace the person so they wouldn't fall. And Moose, being a Great Dane, was big enough to brace a tree if it was going to fall. He was a huge, huge, tall dog. He could with a little stretch of his neck, drink water out of the kitchen sink while standing on all 4 feet. Big dog. And while he didn't work out for an assistance dog, he was a wonderful pet, and unfortunately we lost him this past winter from cancers. But that's kind of where I learned my knowledge base about the things they do down at Judd at Great Plains Assistance Dog Foundation. And they run an excellent program down there as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you say flunk out, did he not meet the criteria, or?
I never asked the details of why he was being kind of transferred out of the program. I suppose it's a little bit like a college or something like that. If you're not meeting the criteria, they find another career path for you. And when Moose was younger, he liked to chase things, and I can't imagine that would have worked well with a person with multiple sclerosis. And I'm just guessing at that. He was a very strong dog physically.
Now, you mentioned he works with multiple sclerosis, but I also hear that they work with dogs to detect tumors in people.
I'm not so sure about the tumors, but detecting seizures, I know that they were working with, and they were actually, my knowledge of this is mostly secondhand, but actually training dogs so that they could detect the seizure before the person would know that they were about to have the seizure. Mm-hmm. And that goes back a few years ago when I was more in contact with their programs.
Mm-hmm. And how did you get in contact with them? They just said, "Oh, we have this dog."
Well, my wife and I both worked in the Buffalo Mall at that time, and my wife will pretty much kidnap anybody that has a dog with them and talk to them. And when the Great Plains Assistance Dogs people would be socializing their dogs at the mall, she would talk to them and struck up a friendship with them, and that's how we got to know the people there, and ultimately adopted Moose from that situation.
Now, Ms. Morgan mentioned that when dogs don't meet the criteria, they go out of the programs and they go to pet homes. Is it the same case with the Judd Service Center?
I'm sure it's the same type of program. There are so many criteria that the dog must meet and so many skills that the dog must learn. But there's a basic temperament. The dog can't be scared of anything because they don't know what situation you're going to put it in. Mm-hmm. And if it's a service dog, in many cases, a person's life relies on the dog's skills. Mm-hmm. It can't be scared of a car backfiring or something like that. So there's a temperament to the dog that's just a foundation to everything. And I imagine if they learn early on that the dog doesn't have that temperament, they're going to try to find it a good pet home. And they make excellent pets because obviously they're very intelligent in other ways. There's just something lacking there somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned temperament. I've heard some people talk about maybe using service animals for hunting. Maybe you shouldn't use them because they'll be more wild. Did you ever use Moose in that capacity?
Well, Moose wasn't going to be a hunter. Great Danes aren't going to be much of a hunter. Mm-hmm. I don't know what works there. One of the things, service dogs are generally what are called the working dog breeds, and it's going to be the herding dogs or the security dogs or the things like that. And these are breeds selectively bred for trainability. You're not going to find a lot of service dogs in the dachshund and the more decorative. That's probably a poor term for it, but for the breeds more based on looks, because they've been selectively bred for their body style and their coat and those type of things. So the service dogs are generally the working breed, selectively bred for trainability. Those are often larger dogs, and one of the sad things in the dog world is that large dogs have shorter lifespans than small dogs. Mm-hmm. So there's a constant weighing of the cost of training and the process of training and the amount of time that goes into training versus the dog's lifespan, where it will be a benefit to the person. And that's an issue with a lot of the breeds of dogs too.
Right. Now, do you think people are generally unaware of how many different types of service animals there are and all the different ways that they're used?
Oh, I'm sure they are. I'm sure, you know, I'm fairly knowledgeable about this and have spent a lot of time working with dogs, raised dogs, trained dogs. I'm not even aware of all the ways they're used. There are so many ways, and there are probably people thinking in new ways out there to train a dog to do some special skill to help people. And that's what this is all about, helping people.
Now, why do you think most people it just isn't a big issue? Most people don't pay attention to it, or why does it go unnoticed?
Well, because it's largely associated with some sort of handicap or disability. And many people would rather not think about those things. And if you're not thinking about those handicaps, you're not thinking about the dogs that help those people deal with those handicaps. So that's part of the issue, I think.
Now, coming from rural North Dakota, I know that many dogs are used for hunting. And there are kennels and training facilities, you know, all over North Dakota.
Right.
But are there any rules or laws that Jamestown or Stutsman County have enacted that specifically apply to kennels or training facilities?
I'm not aware of any laws the county has. The city has some rules regarding the number of animals that can be on one particular premise without a special permit. Other than that, I'm not aware of any rules. And the Americans with Disabilities Act kind of trumps any local rules as far as any service or guide dog or anything like that. They're covered by the federal law. So local rules not applied there.
Now, one of the organizations that also works with a lot of animals, albeit not service animals, but animals, is the Humane Society here in Jamestown. Do trainers or service animal organizations ever work with animals from the Humane Society?
In some cases, my understanding is that those groups will look for dogs out of Humane Society situations if they can test the temperament sufficiently in those situations to gauge it. Most of the training for the service dogs occurs after the dog is 2 years old. So if you're starting with a little puppy, you basically have to foster home it or something like that for 2 years before you start that high school education of the special skills that it's going to need in its service life. If they can kind of shortcut that and adopt a proper animal out of a shelter at roughly 2 years of age, they've shortcut that to the right spot.
Now, going back to your own experience with Moose, did you ever use him in any service capacity? Did you ever volunteer him for?
No, he was a little too big to be a therapy dog and things like that. And mostly he was just a pet that kept us company and did it very well.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Keith. Thank you once again for joining us and providing us with your unique insight to the issues. And to our audience, thank you for joining us for this edition of Night Watch. I'd also like to invite you to join us again next month when Night Watch looks at Books on the Move, the merger of the Alfred Dickey Library and the Stutsman County Library into the James River Valley Library System, along with their plans for a brand new library building. I'd like to thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Matthew Neese. Good night.